right, welcome back to Thrive America. I'm your host, Brent Brooks, and I'm joined by CEO and co-founder of Axiom Franchise Advisors, Bill King. Bill, thanks once again for coming on our show.
I'm glad to be here, Brent. Thanks.
And Bill, you've really been educating me on about what it is that you do, and I'm going to do a quick little recap to get us to our next point. We first talked about the difference between buying a franchise and maybe starting your own business. And one of the things I learned from you is that when I go into buying a franchise, they've got proven systems in place. They've kind of made their mistakes. They've learned from them. Everything's documented. And then we talked about the qualities of an entrepreneur, the things that you need to do, the kind of DNA makeup, if you will, of that entrepreneur. You gotta wear different hats at different times, and you gotta really have a passion for the industry, and so forth. Then we talked about the finances and where your financial snapshot should be, and then you gave us some advice maybe on where to go to get some financing and that kind of thing. So you've got me sold here. And I've got, let's hypothetically say, you know, I'm a potential client of yours, and I come to you and I say, I'm ready to go. I know that I'm going to be an instant success, and I'm going to be on the boat and taking my wife on the cruise in a couple months. Is that true? Do I need a reality check? What's going on here?
The short answer, absolutely.
Okay.
And it's our consulting role to make sure that your expectations are in exact alignment with the reality. Better, wouldn't you agree, that you experience this before you make the investment than afterwards? And then you have to deal with the disappointment, not to speak of what the financial consequences may be if you exit that business. You could lose everything that you've put into that business. So our job really is to, through our qualifying process, to ask you a series of questions, and then for us to have absolute clarity on what you're saying to us are the most important attributes of what you're looking to get out of the entrepreneurial experience. And, you know, commonly, here's what you're going to hear. I'm going to buy the business on the 1st of the month because I have a mortgage due on the 10th. So the business obviously is going to pay for my mortgage. Well, you know, does it seem realistic to you that you could go out and buy an ATM machine for $20,000, plug it into the wall, and it throws out several $100,000 in that same day? No, is the answer to that. And one thing that we want to protect you from doing is to run on the enthusiasm without the facts, and therefore being prone to make a horribly bad and expensive decision for yourself, a career decision. So, here's the real answer to that. Even the best and most successful franchise system may have a failure within that system, but I think if you were rather introspective and you looked into the reasons for that, you probably had a bad operator. I'll give you the example. I lived in Chicago at one time, and where my house was, I used to pass up a boarded McDonald's. And, you know, one could think they must be in trouble. One went out of business. Well, isn't it easier to believe that, unfortunately, they probably had an operator in there that thought that they could operate McDonald's better than the McDonald's system. And it's more likely that in fact occurred. But, you know, the point that we want to help our clients with is that there is no guarantee of success. The best systems can only prepare you as best that they can, but the wild card is you. You are the deciding factor in almost every regard as to whether or not you're going to have a successful enterprise. I don't know how hard you're going to work at the business. I really don't know, beyond what you tell me, how committed you are to that business. I really don't know whether or not you are, as we described earlier in the entrepreneurial DNA, are you absolutely undeterred to find your success? Will you firstly do anything it takes to survive that business? Because you will encounter at some point, earlier on than probably later, some real challenges with that business. I don't care what that business is. Your problems are not necessarily going to be unique. They may be to you, but believe me, they're kind of universal challenges. So you need to prepare yourself for that.
Gotcha. Wow. some of the myths and realities of owning my own business. I think you may have covered some, but I just want to make sure we exhaust
Sure.
some of the myths that are around.
Well, some of the myths include, as I mentioned, that day two they're profitable.
Right.
And that's rarely the case. Now, depending on the format, the period of time for which a business can be profitable varies for a lot of elements and a lot of factors. You know, is it a brick and mortar system? Is it service based? Some will ramp up quicker than others will. Some will have lower thresholds of capital investment, therefore limited in terms of what you might have to invest and borrow for that business. But you know, you need to really know what that business cost you, because everybody else kind of races ahead and they think if I can pay for the franchise fee, I've bought a business. The truth is, the franchise fee is usually the smallest part of the total investment. But you have the franchise fee and the other cash requirements that may include prepays, insurance, legal, maybe prepay on a lease, things of that sort. And then you have what we call total in or total investment. That number may include other non-cash items and those things that may require operating capital for a period of time, because you have to have another source of money to sustain the operations of the business before the business produces it for itself. So all of a sudden now you've got multiple components you might never have really considered. Take all of that and set it aside for a minute. If that isn't enough for you to think about, how do you survive? How do you pay your living expenses? You're going to have another resource stream to buy the groceries in your house, to pay for that mortgage, to provide for the needs of your wife and your children. And you've got to have a plan for all of that, because you can't look to the business and think that I'm going to transfer all of those expenses and have that become the obligation of the business and have the business really pay for those before the business is actually in a position to do so. So the biggest mistake is that people don't plan out far enough with their resources. And they have probably a very, very ultra-conservative idea of what the real cost is without knowing, in fact, the real cost.
Gotcha. All right, so we're gonna come back and wrap things up with Bill. Bill, I want to hear your response to how can you help a company thrive? How can you help a company, a business owner, entrepreneur thrive in this economy? So we're gonna come back with that question and some other topics. So we'll be right back with Bill.